Welcome to this edition of Simsbury School News. My name is Dominique Avery. Today we're going to talk about Simsbury's participation in the Hartford Open Choice program. It started out being called Project Concern in the late 60s. After the Chef O'Neill court case in the late 90s, the name was changed to Open Choice. That's almost 50 years that Simsbury's participated in the program, but I would venture to guess that there are lots of people in Simsbury who have no idea what Open Choice is. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today with our guests, Sue Lemke from our school administration, Samaria Campbell, did I get it right? Yes. Who is something called, well, we'll get to that in a minute. And then I have two students here, Amoya Francis and Shannon Berry. Thank you all for coming. I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation. So for our audience, who may never have heard of Open Choice, what is it? How did it start, and has it changed? That's a lot of questions.
No, absolutely. So Open Choice is a wonderful program that we participate. Currently, there's 28 districts across the state of Connecticut, which Simsbury is one. Approximately 135 schools that are involved in Open Choice. And what it does is provides opportunities for integration between Hartford and Simsbury. So students who reside in Hartford through a lottery process, and we certainly can talk about that more, can apply to the Open Choice program. And if selected, then they attend Simsbury Public Schools and they become a Simsbury Public School student. And they become one of our proud graduates after 12th grade and go on to do great things in college and beyond. So we're really proud of that program here in Simsbury.
So how many kids are actually as part of the program in Simsbury?
We've actually grown the program quite a bit. About 10 years or so ago, we had about 1% of our population, 65 students or so. And then this past year, we have 146 students, preschool through the 12th grade, that participate in the Open Choice program.
Okay, so now I was not aware of that because I remember years ago there were 25 kids.
That's correct.
Like
That's correct.
Uh-huh.
So it was around 2001 we had about, again, that 1%. And then we continued to see increased value in the program, positive feedback in the program on both sides, through Hartford, through Simsbury, and so we thought it best to continue to grow the program, and we've done just that.
That's interesting. Samaria,
yes.
What is an intervention specialist? And I know you're new this year. Tell me a little bit about the job and how you got here.
Okay. Well, the Open Choice Intervention Specialist is basically a school-to-family liaison. I do a lot of work working with parents and the school community, the building officials and leadership in the school, and communicating events that are going on in the school. I also partner with organizations in Hartford for students to participate in various activities and try to bridge the gap between Simsbury activities and Hartford activities. I also work with trying to find interventions to help students be more successful academically, behaviorally, and be more invested in their school community. So it's all encompassing. I'm really working in several different aspects. I'm a certified school counselor. And my background is in that I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., and my bachelor's actually is in early childhood education, and then I went back and I got my master's in school counseling. But since then I've worked in the Windsor Public School System in Avon and now in Simsbury.
And where are you from?
I'm from Windsor.
So you grew up in Windsor?
Yes.
So you just touched on something that brings me to our two young students here. For me, it seems like a big deal to make the decision to get out of your comfort zone and your town, get into a bus every day, and come here. Amoya, can you tell me how old you were when you started, and what was that like?
I can't recall what age, but I started in 5th grade, and it was quite challenging because I missed some of my old friends. I missed the atmosphere of being in my old school. But once coming to Simsbury, it kind of allowed me to, open and, get a taste of the world, get a taste of different varieties and different aspects of learning. So I was kind of biased about the whole thing. But all in all, I was quite, interesting.
Were you scared?
I was scared.
It's interesting because I went to a high school in New York City, which was New York's totally integrated, but I wanted to sing in the choir, and the choir, all my friends were not in the choir, and they had a different lunchtime than I did, and so I went to the cafeteria of this huge New York high school, and I was the only white person in the room, and I noticed, and I sort of had this moment of feeling, I'm a little uncomfortable. It really opened my eyes. So
Yeah.
I admire you for doing it. What made you do it? Was it you or your parents?
It was definitely my parents, but I gotta give props to them because without them, they kind of pushed me. So I thank them, for making me have this opportunity. Yeah. So.
Yes. Okay. So you may not have been so enthusiastic when they said this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Shannon, how about you? How was it for you? How old were you when you started going to school here, and what made you make the decision?
I was 8 years old. Before I came to the Simsbury School District, I was in Milner. It was a Hartford public school. I felt as though that I really needed to be up in Simsbury. I mean, I kind of fit in the Hartford School District, but it was something about me that was like, I don't feel like I really belong here. I mean, I was in like a really familiar environment with like a handful of people that I got along with, but it's just something about it was like, not feeling it.
Was a certain, were you more serious about school? You wanted to apply yourself more? Or?
I wanted to apply myself more. Yeah. There was this one meeting that we had with my my homeroom teacher, my actual teacher at second grade. His name was Mr. Doobie. It was a student-parent conference meeting that I was in as well, and he told me that I had potential, that there was something about me that was totally different from everybody else, that I really needed to be like out in a different school district, like in a suburban neighborhood, and that moment there just felt like, wow, I proved myself well that I really need to be like in a different area, and that it's really good, and it's good to be out here too. Ever since I've been going to Simsbury, it was like, oh man, I feel so good being out here. And like ever since I came here, it's like, oh, this is definitely the good move for me, like the right thing for me to do. And ever since then, it's just been a blessing for me to be out here, because I know there's other people out there who wish they had the same education as people in Simsbury, but they didn't really have the opportunity.
So I assume that it sounds like you both had a good experience, and I was wondering whether the community, the school community, and the rest of the community made you feel like you belonged, and were you welcomed here?
I was totally welcomed, and I felt I belonged here. It when I came here, they like greeted me, and I felt a whole different type of way from what I did, because I thought it was going to be how my old school did it, morning meetings and everything. But as I came in, I kind of was like skeptical about the whole thing. But then they kind of like, taught me and made me feel like, you belong here, and don't be afraid.
So you never felt like an outsider? Or
not
once
really
you got
that
off the
much.
bus the first time?
Like once I got off the bus, I didn't really feel like an outsider. But everything was, smooth.
So you were 8 years old, third grade? What
old.
school did you go to?
Went to Terrifill Elementary School. It was a really good experience. Like when I first got there, I was nervous. I honestly didn't think that anybody would like me, because different people of like different ethnicities. I'm sorry. And it was nerve-wracking, because I honestly didn't think anybody would like me. But most of my friends that I have now were the ones that greeted me like the very first day of school. They made me feel welcome and whatnot. And ever since then, like to this day, like we're still friends. A lot of people that I know around are still friends of mine, really good friends of mine.
So Dominique, some of the challenges that, Amoya was in 5th grade and Shannon was in 3rd, and what we're finding is we like to get students started with open choice as early as we possibly can. So that's why a couple of years ago we started a pre-K component to this. We have a cohort of about 10 students that come in each year, but we like to have them with us as long as possible, because I think, to Shannon's experience, he's been here for 10 years, you really become a part of our community, and that's a huge part of what Samaria does to ensure that that is actually the case. Shannon and Amoya are Simsbury students. Shannon is a Simsbury High School student, and Amoya is a student at Henry James. And the longer that students are with us, the more we can really embrace them into our community.
So that's why I was somehow under the impression that we took kids only in kindergarten or pre-K.
No, I mean, it depends a couple of things. We always look at where the interest is through the lottery process with open choice. You have people asking to come in high school. There have been cases where we've had that happen, but it's very rare because of our belief that we want to work with students as early as possible. But there's a lot of different circumstances where the interest is, what enrollment looks like in each one of those grades, in each one of a school. So it's dependent upon a bunch of different factors, but we've been trying to make a push more to have students enter at the earlier grade levels.
Samaria, the whole busing issue, how kids get here, after school stuff, how is that handled? And is that something that you help with?
Yes, that's a major part of my responsibilities as well. I work with CREC, the Capital Education Regional Office, in trying to coordinate that, especially with after-school activities, and Shannon and Amoy are very involved in after-school activities. And I think that really helps students feel a part of the community. So we arrange for a late bus to come at 4 o'clock, and that's usually for academic involvement or clubs, or if you're staying after school for extra help with a teacher. And then there's a sports bus. Usually it runs between 5 to 6 p.m. depending on winter sports or spring sports, so that picks up all the sports students as well. So it's something that we continuously work on. We work on tweaking the time that the buses come, in trying to coordinate, especially around the sports schedules. So that helps too. But I think there was a time there weren't late buses available for students to be involved. So I'm really glad that students have that opportunity to stay after school. That helps them further their relationships with kids in the community. And it's a really good idea.
And that's funded through the Open Choice program, which a lot of people don't realize, that there's a great amount of grant support funding that allows for those buses, those extra buses, different supports, having different programs and different staff members work with students. And that's been very, very helpful to have that funding support through the state.
So now, how about sleepovers? I know junior high school girls do a lot of sleepovers. Do you take part in that kind of stuff, or is that?
Well, I do take part of that stuff. Just recently, I went over to my friend's house, but I couldn't get to sleep over, because next day, But, it's fun, seeing different places you haven't seen before, meeting different people. It's really cool.
Shannon, have you done sports or after-school stuff? Have you experienced this busing issue, late buses?
Not really.
No.
I haven't really done sports. I was never really into sports. I'm sorry.
But what
No,
are
that's
you
fine.
into?
What
You have some pretty cool interests.
Yes. Arts.
Arts.
Music. Yes.
Well, Simsbury has great arts and music programs.
Mm.
As we're recording this, of course, this is not going to air today, but there's this all-school chorus concert tonight,
Yes.
which sounds amazing. There's so much music going on.
Absolutely. When Shannon was at the middle school, he would always be drawing, and we would take his drawings, and I said, this is going to be, I'm going to have this and say, I have a Shannon Berry original, because you're going to be a famous artist someday, no doubt about it.
It's
Very
One
talented.
of the most recent shows we did was with Cindy Rem. Did you ever have her?
Yeah. Well, I never had her, but I know.
You know
of her
she
great-
is.
Yes.
So, Samaria, do you also work with young men who live at the ABC house?
No, but one of the young men in the ABC house is part of the Multicultural Club that we started at the high school.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yes. So he's the PR person. So he works on doing the announcements and communications and posters throughout the school. So I work closely with some of the young men in there. We have a lot of the same goals and missions, but it's, you know, the ABC House is just for young men.
Right.
But kids come from similar backgrounds that kids from the Open Choice program come from. So I do work a lot with them, but I don't work directly with the ABC House.
So, what happens in the summer? Are there programs in the summer? Does this continue, or do you go off and do your own thing in the summer? What do you do in the summer? What have you been doing in the summer?
Just hanging out with friends up here, because most of my friends live up in Simsbury, and it's easy to commute now because I know where they live. So yes, I do a lot of skateboarding as well, with friends. Just a lot of hanging out.
So you tend to hang out more here than in Hartford?
It goes hand in hand,
Yeah.
because I have an even amount of friends in Hartford and in Simsbury. Yes.
So so you don't feel, or how do you feel about? How do your friends in Hartford feel about your going to school here?
Well, we haven't really talked about that. I mean, I'm sure they won't mind, because most of my friends who live in Hartford are also in the correct program. So yes. I have friends who go to Weathersfield, Glastonbury, a lot of friends that are spread out. But the ones that go to Hartford, I'm not exactly sure. I don't think they really seem to care that much. They don't really treat me differently either.
Well, that's interesting. Is that your experience too?
Well, I talk to my friends, that I went to school in Hartford with, and I text them and stuff, and they ask me what school. I think most of them are really glad for me. Most of them, ask, when are you coming back? And I'm saying, I'm gonna stay here, because it's a really good community, and I want to go forth. So
Mary, this is your first year here.
Yeah.
So I hate to put you on the spot, but what is your impression of the program and of the town, actually?
I think it's a really great program. It has a lot of great aspects to it. I like that there are students coming in from not only different ethnicities, but different socioeconomic statuses, different background, different experiences, that students from the Simsbury community, which is really homogenous, probably wouldn't get to meet or have relationships and friendships with. So I like that aspect, and I hope that that will continue through the work that I'm doing, fostering those relationships and promoting open dialogue too in the Simsbury community as far as addressing race and diversity. So I see a lot of great potential as far as where the program can go and how it can develop.
Yeah, it's a very good point you make, and it's one that I was just going to raise with both of you, is that perhaps people think that this is something that Simsbury is doing for kids in Hartford, but having grown up in a multicultural community, I'm always stunned by how homogenous Simsbury is, and it's really of great value to us as well.
Yes.
It is a win-win. It is a win for students that lay their heads on the pillow at night in Simsbury, and it's a win for the students that lay their heads on the pillow at night in Hartford, because they are Simsbury Public School students. But what they bring to the table really enhances, I think, the experiences for all. And that's the real mission of what Open Choice tries to do.
So I had a question about buses. I know that there are enormous problems on the buses in town. What is the bus situation in the morning? I mean, are there bus monitors, and how is that handled? Because sometimes I used to think that in Simsbury they ought to have bus monitors on all the buses because there was so much hijinks.
There are only bus monitors on the elementary school buses, or if they're 5th or 6th grade students with elementary school buses, if there's a split in the school. So mostly just elementary school. They don't have any on the high school buses usually. But I've been working with Creco and trying to change that, because I think that every bus could really use a monitor, whether Simsbury or a choice bus, just to help keep with the behavior and to make sure that the bus driver is able to drive safely. But there have been issues with the bus that continues to be an issue.
Right, I think that's an age-old issue.
Yeah.
Did you have that experience too? I mean, my daughter used to come home sometimes and, just have terrible stories.
Well, my bus now in middle school, there's only 2 of us on the bus, so it's
Oh.
kind of easy, we all get together, But like in elementary school, it was like some tough times, But luckily we had like a monitor, so she kind of like kept stuff down, So.
So I was frankly surprised to hear how many children are involved who are here in Simsbury. How many did you tell me there were?
146.
Okay, because
So it's about 3%.
Right. So I remember years ago that people used to say, and probably that was because when we had a larger school population, that we have no more room, and so we can't accept more. So now we have a little more room because we have declining enrollment. But are there people who say we don't have the funding? I mean, we pay high taxes, so why are we taking other kids? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think that's part of the misconception around where the funding comes from, and there is great funding around open choice, and there's also a concern, well, what if the funding goes away? We don't have any indication that that's going to happen anytime soon. So, we just don't, continue to take kids for the sake of taking kids. We want to be thoughtful, we want to be intentional about the planning, and also look at these other factors regarding declining enrollment, and, what does that look like for enrollment at specific schools. And we take great time and intention in looking at where our placements are. So sometimes open choice might say, okay, we have some 6th graders or 5th graders or 3rd graders, and sometimes I just don't have the seats because we're reaching near capacity, and I don't want to push that envelope. So, again, we're very thoughtful and who we take and why we take, because we want the program to be successful. We put a lot of resource into all of our students, specifically the students in open choice. We make a very conscious decision to hire the best in Samaria Campbell, and to provide additional supports. So I think that people think that we don't get funding for the program. It is very well funded through the state of Connecticut. Can improvements be made there? Sure, always improvements can be made, but again, very thoughtful and intentional about our numbers and about how that interfaces with our enrollment, specifically at schools and then overall.
So one thing that you touched on in the very beginning, which I'd like to go back to, is how the students become involved in the program. You said something about a lottery. I mean, so if these 2 young people said, or their parents said, we want them to go be part of open choice, to go to a suburban school, how do they go about it?
So the open choice program is actually parceled out into zones, and it depends upon your geographical region in Hartford. That wasn't the case when Shannon entered the program, but they've made some changes since Amoya's been in the program the past couple of years. And there are certain schools within a geographical area that you are in Hartford, so and I think that's to create some efficiencies in transportation. So parents can participate in this lottery process and sign their sons or daughters up for the lottery, and they can name a specific school district within their zone. If they would like, they could say, hey, any school in the zone would be fine. And at that point, they're also applying to different magnet schools and magnet opportunities. So the names and the interest all go into a lottery, and that usually opens up in the fall. There's a pretty big push in advertising. You probably see it on some major news outlets. And then that lottery process closes. And then in the next coming weeks, we'll start getting feedback upon, okay, here are the students that are interested in your open seats. And then we make that happen, make sure that they're registered here in Simsbury. But there's more complexities to it, but I kind of just just boiled it down for you. That's typically how it works. But we have to declare what seats we're going to open up first. And again, that's generated from, okay, here's some lottery interest. We don't know specifically who, but we know what grade level they're interested in. We also know that if they have a sibling already in the open choice program, specifically in Simsbury, because preferences are given to those siblings and families.
Do either of you have a brother
Yes.
or sister? Yeah, you do?
Yeah, I have one in 4th grade, Victoria, and
Victoria, did you say?
Victoria
And is she
Francis.
also
yeah,
coming?
And where does she go?
she goes to Latimer Lane.
And you?
I
Any
have a
siblings?
The younger sibling, her name is Sishani. She goes to Latimer Lane as well.
Uh-huh. Oh, well, that's good that they give, because then you've got two of you and you have a little more continuity.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's continuity for the families as well.
Right.
And it helps with the partnerships that we're building with our families here in Simsbury and our families who reside in Hartford. Simsbury has done a phenomenal job having partner families. So that you can have those sleepovers, or when there's an event at night, instead of going back and forth from Hartford to Simsbury, students in the program can remain here in Simsbury, and Simsbury has done some really great work increasing participation in those partner families.
So how can more people in Simsbury or parents get involved? What should they do?
Well, I think one way is with the Partner Family Network that we try to start in elementary school to help that helps create long-lasting relationships throughout the years. So it's very little commitment. We usually work with the PTO or PTA, and so we go to the meetings, myself and the social worker, Laura Salatoro, and promoting it. And it's very little commitment. We usually just try to focus on after-school events. And sometimes if parents don't feel comfortable with having their kids stay over a family's house, that's fine too. Maybe they just want to call them and say, well, hey, did you get the information on this program going on tonight or this concert? It's a way for them just to stay in the loop. And also another way I think to stay connected is to kind of get involved in different, I really was trying to increase participation with the Multicultural Club and have more parents involved in helping get the word out about that. I think that's one great way at the high school. And just more parents probably that would be willing to be involved in different programs going on within the schools to offer their time or assistance.
I just saw that we have 1 minute left. I want to give everybody an opportunity to say what they didn't say. Let me start with you, Shannon. Anything that you didn't get to say about the program that you'd like to share?
And Shannon, did you want to share about your next steps, about your
Oh, yeah, I
and
wanted
your
to ask you.
I think you should.
Yes.
Oh, yes, that's right. I think a couple months ago, I received a scholarship from the University of Hartford. I had entered in a competition, a scholastics competition that was like nationwide, and unfortunately I didn't win, but there was also some really good things I got out of it. So it was that scholarship, and then I think 2 weeks later, that scholarship went up more, so.
Oh, well, that sounds
thankfully,
great.
yes. And now I'm also for another scholarship opportunity for a full tuition at the University of Hartford.
Oh,
So
sounds
fingers
amazing.
crossed.
You know,
Fingers crossed.
Fingers
that was
crossed.
on my list of things to ask, and I just skipped over it. Anything that you didn't tell us?
Well, I write, and just recently I did an oratorical contest, and I came in 2nd place.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And I just entered in the Chet Dream Big competition and wrote about women's rights. And from that, I'm hoping to, expand my writing, so, get my word out to people, inspire people, and, make a change.
Well, you sound like two absolutely wonderful young people, and I think we're lucky to have you. I'm not going to get a chance to give you a last word because we
Okay.
really are out of time. And I'd like to thank everyone here at SCTV behind the scenes for their help in getting the show on the air. Thanks especially to my guests, Sue Lemke, Samaria Campbell, Amoya Francis, and Shannon Berry. And finally, thank you for joining us. We'll be back here next month. If you missed any portion of the show, you can find it on our website. This is for you guys too, simsburytv.org. You can get updates on new shows and see the show schedule for all our channels, Comcast 5, 95, and 96, and Frontiers UVerse Channel 99. You can also like us on Facebook, and your parents can like us on Facebook too. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for Simsbury School News.